So I think to kick this off, we relaunched a lot of our speed training protocols. It's been about a year ago now. A lot of that had to do with a lot of research that Tyler had done just on the, real specific details of how people were going through the protocols and how to sort of optimize out some of those details of the overspeed training protocols. Tyler, you want to talk just a little bit about some of that research and how those things were tweaked when we relaunched?
Yeah, and I think as Mike described, right, a lot of what we're doing in this scenario is we're just capturing what we feel like our users have been doing for a really long time anyway. I think a lot of our users are stepping through that level 1 protocol, that initial training, seeing those big speed gains. And then after that, it's like trying to exactly figure out how they were targeting and what they were doing. And what we typically found is people weren't just starting day 1 and going like 250 weeks of 3-day-a-week training. They were building in these cycles. And so we thought, hey, you know what? Let's do some research behind it. Let's look into other fields of research for training. Let's do our own testing in the lab. And let's create these different cycles where what we're doing is trying to help golfers really intensely go after speed, and then have some times where they're really kind of maintaining speeds and giving their body a little bit of a rest to prep for that next big jump and next big cycle up. And so I was able to get a lot of golfers into my lab. I was able to do testing on rest periods and swing positions and all these kind of things to really tweak a little bit of what we were doing and give a lot more directed training that can last, 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah, and I think the basis of the training didn't change. What we've always found since day 1 with SuperSpeed is that the very basis of this training is moving faster than normal during your golf swing. And we're doing that in such a way to kind of systematically progress you through different drill positions, progress you into slightly more required coordination, increasing muscle activation, increasing motor unit activation, all of those different things as we go through the training. But the basis of it is really the same. The basis is you're going to swing as fast as you can with these lighter clubs. Your brain's going to remember that faster speed. We're going to gradually add resistance back to help make this new expectation of how fast your golf swing is a reality for your body. And that's been something that's been true since the beginning. I just think we've made it more efficient as we've gone. So the first thing that I really want to do here, because I know a lot of people are probably familiar with our products or have our products that are on this webinar, I would like to make sure that you guys are all very familiar with exactly where to find all of the training protocols, how to go through them, and some more of that detail. So Tyler's going to share a screen here, and he's going to pull up our training site, which you can get to really easily. You just go to our website, click on the training tab at the top of the page, and then it'll say start free training. So just go ahead and click on that start free training button. All right, and then once we get to this page, all we have to do is log in. You need to just can you just empty the cache on the browser?
Let's come in again. This is not working very well, Mike.
Interesting. I'm pulling it up on mine too. Looks like we might have a lot. Kyle, can you try this on your computer, please? Yeah, let's do that. Sorry about this, slight technical difficulty.
Mike, mine's fine.
Okay, yeah, just share your screen then.
I've got it now, Kyle.
Okay.
We just did a big website update, so I think part of that just might have to be refreshing browser cache.
You see, see we're good now?
Yeah, that looks good. So basically what we have here is all of our different training protocols. So you go to this page by just clicking on the training tab at the top of the page, and then you click on start free training. It'll just ask you to create a free account. So just type in your email and choose a password. And then you get access here to all of our different training protocols that we have at SuperSpeed. And that's a lot more than just our overspeed training protocols. That's also the Counterweight C Club and some of the more advanced stuff that we have as well with some of our other products. So if we go ahead and go into the overspeed training protocols, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of different stuff in here. So at the top, that video is going to talk about some of the things we're going to go over today. It's going to talk about our training cycles. It's going to talk about really where to start with the protocols, and kind of the difference between what we do with our primary training phases, our maintenance training phases, and things like that. You can also, if you click on that protocol handbook, Kyle, that's going to bring up another page that is going to go into a little bit more detail. This is, I mean, we actually do have requests all the time for people to print these things, but this is just another piece here that shows all of the different protocols, the different drills that are in them. Now, if we go back now to that main page, so we recommend if you're just starting this training, everybody, regardless of skill level, regardless of what your handicap is, everyone starts with level 1. And we've tested this ad nauseum at this point to see if there's a better way to customize this program for different players when they start. Honestly, we find that most players, even elite athletes, don't have a lot of experience with neurological speed training. So starting with just this basic level 1 protocol is a great way to sort of acclimate yourself to the process and really get your body going and getting ready to move faster with overspeed training. Now, the level 1 protocol is part of our first training cycle. So that first training cycle is going to involve 5 weeks of the level 1 training protocol and then 5 weeks of the level 2. Now, the level 2 protocol used to have some other drills in it. It used to have our kneeling swings in it. We've actually simplified that protocol. It no longer has the kneeling swings in with our last update. And that protocol just now is just a slight advancement over the level 1 protocol, but it's not nearly as intensive of a change as it used to be. So once you get through those 10 weeks, we consider that our first primary training phase. We're then going to move into a maintenance phase. Now, what's the difference there? Well, the primary training phase, we're going to be doing 3 days a week with a full day off in between for optimal results. Once we get into a maintenance phase, we're going to bump that down to only 1 time a week. We've found that over the course of that first 10 weeks, that's enough time for everybody to reach what we call their first plateau phase. So when you start this training, if you measure before and after speeds, you're going to see a jump in swing speed really after the first session of about 5%. Over the next, I'd call it really, Tyler, for most players, probably what, 6 to 8 weeks?
Yep.
Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, if you kept measuring these before and after speeds, you're going to gradually see the before speeds creep up, the after speeds going to stay about the same, and you're going to reach a point somewhere in that 6 to 8 week range where you're going to hit our first plateau phase, which is where the before and after speeds are going to be the same for a good amount of time. We chose 10 weeks to do this instead of 6 to 8, just because there are a handful of players out there where it does take a little longer. And we know if we get 10 weeks of that solid training, we've really gotten to a point of permanency with those speed gains, as long as we can keep doing the training at a very minimal level. And we recommend that being once a week.
And I've seen that, just to jump in on the 1 day a week thing, because I think we get a lot of questions about this. And so I've been really fortunate in the last little bit to be able to actually do some work with some, LPGA players, some high level amateurs, PGA players. And when we're doing this speed training for them, this creates a scenario where on their busy weeks where they're playing, we scale back the training to just 1 day a week. And as we're tracking speeds, their speeds aren't dropping off if they do, 2 or 3 weeks of 1 day a week because they're busy playing. And so a common question is 1 day a week enough to maintain? And it for sure is. There's a lot of great research in other sports. We've seen those same things in what we've done. But I'm always I will beat this drum over and over again, Mike, which is After you get that permanence from those 10 weeks, right? You go into this off season, you're going to scale up for these 10 weeks, really gain some speed. That's awesome. Still then do the training after that 1 day a week. I think the worst thing you can do is build that speed and then stop doing anything. Just like muscles, just like cardiovascular endurance, running, whatever it might be, if you stop doing something, you're going to lose, a large portion of those benefits. And the longer you don't do it, the more you're going to lose. And so this is where I think that maintenance phase of just 1 day a week, find those 15 minutes, do the training, and you're going to be able to maintain those speeds.
Yep, I agree. So that's really our first training cycle. Now that maintenance phase can last anywhere. We want you to be in that maintenance phase for a minimum of 4 weeks, but it could last longer. A lot of players will extend that part of the maintenance phase throughout the regular golf season, and then do these off-season programs more like we're talking about today. Now, if you've already done this training, if you've already gone through those, level 1, level 2 protocols, you've been in doing it, less often or in a maintenance type phase throughout the season, and you're ready to get into the second training cycle, there's a little bit of a different process here. We add in 2 weeks at the beginning that we call a ramp-up phase or a ramp-up period. That ramp-up period isn't going to advance the protocol yet, but it's going to get you back to that 3 days a week of normal training. And we feel like that's just a good little acclimation period before we make the protocols more aggressive and really get into that. I also see a question here I just want to go ahead and answer that from Aaron Thomas. When I started a year ago, after level 4, it was 5 reps per. Now it looks 3 reps per. Yes, that was one of the major changes that we did. We moved everything to 3 reps as opposed to advancing the number of reps in the level 4 and 5 protocol. Main reason for that is that we found that 4 and 5 reps of these different drills just ended up with too many reps for the player to be able to consistently produce maximum intensity on each one of those reps. And moving faster than your normal swing during every swing in this training is the most important factor to your success. So, having these swings where you're getting tired, or if you're doing them late in the day or after a round when you can't produce maximum effort, is not going to be nearly as effective. It's just the same idea, and this is another question that's right up there at the top from Lou Eichler. Does it help or hurt if you add weight to the heavy stick? I would say that it hurts your speed training ability all the time because, again, this training is all about moving faster than your normal swing. If you add too much weight to the heavy club, it's going to slow you down. No matter how well you're doing with those lighter clubs, there's a certain point of resistance where you're not going to be able to make that move any faster. And now, granted, you may be doing some positive things there from motor unit recruitment or other types of mechanical pieces that could help you gain speed, but it's not pure speed training because you're not going to be moving as fast as you're not going to be moving nearly as fast as you could with that club that's only slightly heavier. We only go slightly heavier for that kind of adding of permanence to the training.
And I'll add, Mike, to that standpoint, right? I think we do enough things where we're not moving as fast as possible and faster than what we'd like to train that neurological system, that I think adding those heavy weights, again, it's training, but I think you're getting into these sub-max velocity trainings. Again, just because we're on this topic, Bill, you asked the question during maintenance phase, can you train more than once a week? And as we're talking about this, again, what we found is that it's good for your body to take some of these breaks. And so, when you start training more than 1 time a week, you're now into these more primary speed building phases. And so we really suggest very strongly that you take off at least 4 weeks where you do just 1 day a week, because that's going to allow you then to recover a little bit and be ready to hit that second training cycle really fast. And so I'd make sure just 1 day a week during maintenance.
Okay, great. And then that works a very similar way with this. You're going to do that primary training phase for the level 3 and level 4 for 10 weeks, and then move into a maintenance phase where we back down to level 3. Third training phase is similar. Ramp up with level 3, do 4 and 5, back into maintenance with level 3. And that's primarily because the level 4 and 5 protocols have some drills in them that are a little bit more application specific, I would say. Level 3 is somewhat of the end progression of some of our basic drills that we do. So we like to use that as a maintenance phase after that point. Okay, we can go ahead and stop the screen share now. I think that's an idea, but I just wanted everybody to know that all that information is very easily available on our website. A lot of people kind of put a bookmark on that training site and just pull it up if they want to watch those videos on your phone. That's an easy way to do it. Obviously, as we talked about in our last webinar, if you have the Blast Motion sensors and app, that app will walk you through all those different protocols as well. And we're working on moving that experience even further, moving that into the training cycles and other pieces there. Okay, well, Tyler, anything else you want to add just kind of on some of the basic recommendations there?
Yeah, I think that's good for basic recommendations. I think again, those protocols are there are version of what we've seen, over the years and over all of the, tens to hundred thousands of golfers who've done this training that work the very best. And as much as we might try and look at different things, this is what's working. It's working really well. I always like to pair that with the idea of, well, what kind of gains can you expect? Because I think this is a key component of what we look at. And again, what we typically see is through that first primary training phase, you're going to see somewhere between about 5 to 6% speed gains. But in an actual larger data set where I was able to look at a number of our users out beyond just that first training cycle, the gains actually pop up to about 9.5, almost 10% speed gains for people who've now been doing this for the 3 months, maybe 6 months to a year. And so in terms of expectations, I think it's always nice to say, hey, if you can really tackle this off season and then into the next season, those gains are there to be had.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason those training cycles are so important. We always see that 5 to 6% gain during that first training cycle, and then that maintenance phase, you get a little bit of break, and then as you ramp up and get into that second training cycle, on average, we see about a 3.5% additional gain as we get into that. And again, it's just not a straight linear challenge here. It's more of a jump, and then there's this normalization time, and there's this plateau phase, and then we keep moving in, and we'll get another jump, and then that'll normalize and plateau. That's kind of how I would describe that. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there's a couple questions here that I think are pretty good. We can maybe talk about a little bit. I'm looking at the one from Bob and Mike here, kind of same. Mike's coming off a rotator cuff surgery. He's used the speed sticks. What would he recommend to do differently to enhance his recovery? And then Bob's got a question also kind of on the physical side. It says TPI is a testing program on their website that recommends if you can't pass certain tests that you might be risking injury by doing a speed program. So I kind of want to talk about both of those sort of at the same time here. First of all, we're very big fans of everything TPI. We sponsor TPI nationally and have teams at every one of their live seminars and information in all of their classes. So we love the guys at TPI. I think, I think there's a couple different factors to consider here. The first big one is that during our speed training protocols, you're never hitting a golf ball. So hitting a golf ball or going out to the range to hit a series of golf balls is actually a much more taxing experience on the body because of impact than the drills that we're doing during a speed training protocol. Now, that being said, if at any point during your golf swing or process of hitting balls, you have any type of pain going on in your body, we would highly recommend going to see a medical professional and getting cleared before you're going to start doing a speed training program. However, here's the thing. There's kind of those good, better, best ways to implement this type of training into your personal program. People are starting at different places. Some people are taking golf lessons. Some people are taking golf lessons and have a regular golf fitness or gym program. Some people don't have any of that. They just are, looking for a way to hit the ball a little bit further off the tee and just want to do one thing. Again, base rule of thumb, if there's any pain involved, do not do it. If you're beyond that, what we're finding, and I think Tyler can talk to this a lot from what he's been seeing in his lab with a lot of the data, is that strength is very important. Functional mobility is very important. Generally speaking, if we have major mobility problems, there's some type of couple with pain when we start to do an activity like golf. So if there's any pain, remember, stop. However, from a strength standpoint, most people, when we test them, we're finding have enough strength to get more out of their body than what they're currently getting. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not great to have a complementary fitness program or a complementary strength program going on. In fact, it can be extremely beneficial to getting even bigger gains. But Tyler, you want to talk a little bit more on that, on what you're seeing from the more of the biomechanics side?
Yeah, and I think this is a great thing. And as I'm scrolling through the question, I think this is one of the most common questions we get, especially as we're going into an off season, is how do I incorporate speed training with strength training, and which is more important, and what does the data say, and those things. And I think Mike's hit on a number of things. I'll just share with you some of the stuff I'm seeing in my labs from the data I've collected, and then also kind of in some of the work I've been doing with players. And so, first and foremost, as Mike said, I think everyone is functioning below what they currently could do based on their strength, meaning strength might be here, speed is here. And I think those initial gains are to be had by anyone, regardless of strength level. Barring any injuries or pain. Okay. That's a big thing. I actually did some data collections where I look at speed training 45 minutes a week. And I actually compared that in some statistical models to strength training programs that are longer, right? Maybe you're doing an hour in the gym 3-4 days a week, and med ball throws and weight training and things like that. And the 45-minute a week with SuperSpeed has the identical effect, if not a little bit more, than some of these other trainings. So again, the specificity of this speed training really trumps that other strength training. That being said, if you're going to do strength training, you have to remember, what is your priority this off season? Is it to get stronger, or is it to get faster? Because those are two different things. And as I work with players, sometimes I find that speed training ends up being kind of the thing they do after a busy day of practice, the thing that you would do after a day in the gym or something like that. And I would say, make speed training your priority, which means if you're going to do strength training, do the speed training when your body is by far the freshest. So that means, a way to maybe do that is, Mondays, you're going to speed train. Tuesdays, maybe you strength train. Wednesday's a day off, back to speed training the next day. But what I see that I think can really be a detriment to gaining speeds, Mike, is players who try and do everything. They're trying to do too much, and then they end up not gaining really either very well. And so I would say, focus on that speed. The very best way to assess that, Mike, and this is what I do for my own game and the players who come into my lab, I use a radar to assess when they're swinging the very fastest. And if they start using that radar and realize, oh, when I did it at this time of the day after this workout, my speeds dropped by 3 to 4 miles per hour. Well, that's not going to be a good time for you to do speed training. You want to find those times a day where you're the very freshest and you can make these clubs go as fast as possible. Now, again, the things I would recommend, any kind of good hip hinge leg workout, some upper body pushes and pulls. You don't have to get complex in that type stuff. The rotational change is going to really come from this speed training. That's going to help you convert things from, maybe linear movements to these rotational movements. But again, we want you to make speed that priority, because that's what's going to lead to the most gains.
I think it's just more bang for your buck is the way to put it. Like, most people, it's low-hanging fruit because they've never done like neurological speed training before, so you can get some big gains there very safely without hitting a ball or doing anything or picking up a weight. If you want to take it from there, I think there is some advantage for sure to incorporating other types of fitness training along with it. We had one good study a couple years ago that Steve Johnson did out in Virginia. He's a baseball coach. It was a baseball academy with our baseball products, but he actually showed some improved gains with a lot of his players by, kind of implementing what I would call like a motor unit recruitment type program right before doing the speed training. So he'd have the players warm up, and then they would do, and these were more advanced athletes who could safely do all of this and were doing it under the supervision of trainers, but would actually do like a very low amount of rep of like a deadlift or some type of Olympic lifting movement, or like a big, like a heavy med ball type toss, and then immediately do the speed training, and then, and then test after. And we did find that there could be some definite benefit to sort of that lighting the fuse kind of idea, or activating motor units right before you're going to then you can do the speed training to optimize gains. So there's a lot to that part of it, but I think the best question is it safe to do super speed? As long as you can swing a golf club and hit golf balls without any pain, it's safe to go ahead and start a super speed program. But if at any time there is that pain, or if it's something you're just ignoring, you definitely should consult your medical professional before you get started.
We've had a few. I'll do this in terms of safety because I see a lot of questions related to different age groups. So again, I've done studies now on junior golfers. I've done study on the younger middle-aged golfers. I've done studies pairing up with some great coaches who are doing things with senior golfers. So I think the youngest person in my age group was 4. The oldest person was 85. So that probably spans about everyone. And it's so interesting that from an average standpoint, we really settle in on that kind of 5 to 7%, regardless of age. So I think we might see some things where maybe depending upon the player, they might have more of an athletic ceiling and those types of things. But for sure, old, young, middle-aged, male, female, there's those gains. We've seen those across all those populations.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this next question is a pretty good one. I've got 2 questions here about like combining the training with the C club and the 4th and 5th protocols, how to use the C club and the force pedals together. I think those are great questions that we can talk about. So our new recommendation that we have once you're into the 2nd training cycle. So if you're in the 2nd training cycle or 3rd training cycle, so this is you're doing the level 3s to 5 protocols. We've found that most players during that time are able to handle doing both the overspeed training protocol and the C club protocol in the same day without losing too much steam there. Now, this is where it gets a little more advanced. I would say start with that. If you find by the end of those sessions that you're not able to create maximum speed with like the C club, I do the C club second, the overspeed first, the C club second. If you're not able to maintain your fastest speeds with the C club, that's when I would consider potentially reducing the reps slightly. And then, you could maybe reduce your overspeed training protocol to 2 reps instead of 3, and the C club protocol to 2 reps instead of 3, and see if you can maintain those speed gains. We've found that most people can, as long as they give themselves at least about a 5 to 10 minute break in between those protocols. Is that about consistent with what you've seen too, Tyler?
Yeah, and I did a C club only study looking at swing speed changes, and I actually had some people in that study who've done both the 3 club and the C club system. And I would say the most common thing they say is it felt like they could swing that C club like faster given the state of their body, if that made sense. Like it was just it's a little bit of a different stimulus. And so I think when I look at that, I would concur that the data suggests the same thing. C club following 3, but again, use that radar. I know I'll tout this big time, but again, when you go to a gym, you know how much weight you're lifting. When you run, you know how fast you're going or your heart rate or your distance, right? That radar, like the PRGR or the blast that we have, that's going to be the tool that allows you to really kind of dial in when can I make these clubs move the fastest and what is it that I do to make these clubs move the fastest.
Yeah, and I mean with a lot of our tour players and advanced athletes, I mean we'll test them at different points in the day to see when they're getting the best speed results out of their speed training, and that's when we recommend that they train. So checking that out, I would say that's really fine tuning it on a very high level, but yeah, do it in the morning a couple times, do it in the evening, do it in the afternoon. See when you can get your fastest speeds with the super speed clubs. That's probably the best time to be training it, is when you can produce the fastest speeds. Mm-hmm. If you're just starting, or if you're starting and doing both of those trainings at the first time, so you're in the first training cycle, then we don't recommend you do them on the same day. So we'd actually recommend you do 2 days a week of the 3 club set, 1 day a week of the C club. Adding in some of our other training, somebody mentioned specifically the force pedals. That was Tim, Kyle, if you want to get those questions off. Kevin and Tim's questions we just answered. The force pedal training, and actually I'm holding our brand new, this is a brand new product coming out in about a month. Get ready for this. But that's going to be a grip strength training aid. These other training protocols like the force pedals or the super speed squeeze that's coming out soon, those training protocols can actually be done completely independently of the speed training, because your force pedal protocol, although it can help a lot of people get speed, it's not a overspeed training protocol. It's a ground force mechanics protocol. It's helping you use the ground better. So just like you are doing your swing mechanics program or your short game program or whatever other modules of programs that you might have in your overall lesson program or practice program, you can do those independently of the speed training, because it's not the same rules that apply there as far as those max intensity reps all the time.
Mhm.
All right.
There was something I want to talk about, Mike, that I'm seeing some questions come out in terms of swing mechanics and some drill positions and things. You know, players who maybe say, hey, I don't have the very best swing to begin with. Is this still good for me? Or there's some things to be had? And again, I just see in my lab, like golfer after golfer come in, they start utilizing the ground more efficiently. Like everything I measure says that their swings are getting a little bit better. I think this is where those drills are so important. And I've measured the drills on my force plates with my systems in my lab. And we're seeing the reason why we have these drills is so that players can really start to learn how to initiate and utilize that lower body first in the swing. That's a key component to generating swing speed. It's also a nice key component to just good swing mechanics in general. And so these drill positions, the way they're outlined, they're meant to help these common issues that we see a lot of golfers struggle with. And the beauty of it is, you don't have to do anything except for follow those cues of, hey, lead with that lead leg, swing fast, and things just kind of tend to sort out really well in terms of those mechanical benefits.
Look, our training protocols are designed from a motor learning standpoint to get you a lot of bang for your buck, again, without necessarily having to understand every tiny piece of detail that's involved there. But we see when people go through this training, they use the ground better. When you use the ground better, you sequence better. When you sequence better, you create better downswing loading and lagging of the club. When you do all of those things, you tend to create a more repeatable, consistent, and powerful golf swing. So I'm a big believer that athleticism is very good for your golf swing. And as you become more athletic and as you use your body better in your golf swing, a lot of things that you may not have thought were ever going to change are going to get better. So just little things there.
And I'll kind of add to that, Mike, because I'm seeing these questions pull up too, in terms of translating speeds to the golf course and when I see that, but also will they transfer, or, hey, I'm not seeing those transfer to the golf course. Again, as we go into the off season, a lot of you might be in areas where you might not see a golf course for the next 10, 12 weeks. I know I'm in Utah and our mountains are getting pounded with snow. It might be a minute before I get to see a golf course again. And so this is where I'll just say, swing speed is a skill. What we're doing right now is we're helping you train the ability to generate that fast swing speed. I think the other part of that piece is making sure you can then transfer it to the golf course. I think we see players transfer speed gains to the golf course easily in 3, 4, 5 weeks. I think they're seeing those results out on the golf course. But sometimes you almost have to let yourself know that it's okay to swing a little bit faster on the golf course. And so that's something where when you do come out of this off season, if you haven't been able to play a little bit, be willing to spend some time on the range. If you have a radar, that's a great way to do it, and get comfortable swinging this club a little faster, because I think we have a lot of players who their ceiling might be 115 and they might be only swinging, out there 105 or whatever, just because they don't want to swing too fast, or they've trained themselves to swing slower. And so I always encourage golfers to get comfortable with those speeds. I'll measure my speeds out on the golf course on a few holes every single round to make sure that I'm not leaving too much in the tank. Because I think when we watch professional players play and you watch the slow-mos and even the fast motion of their swings, they're not leaving much in the tank. They're really getting after it, and they're getting after it on a lot of their drives. And I think amateur golfers should be doing the same.
Yep, I agree. So let's get a couple of these questions here. So Derek, at what point should actual golf swing lessons be implemented? I'd say whenever you like, right away, during. I mean, my students, when we used to run our golf academy, I would have them doing a speed training program, but at the very same time, they've always got a swing mechanics program and working on various things, or a ball control program, short game programs. Speed programs are just another module of your training. So do those as much as you like, please. Another one here, I took the summer off from speed training. Once I start up again, how long should it take before I start seeing results on the course? If you've already done this, you're probably getting into that ramp up phase to go into level 3, level 4, the second training cycle. I mean, I think you probably are going to probably go through that first little like normalization phase a little faster typically than you do the first time around. But I would guess probably like 4 to 6 weeks in. Tyler, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, again, I think that ends up being a really kind of great way to look at that in terms of kind of where to start. Again, I think we have a lot of players who are probably coming back to these protocols, Mike, who have like got through level 1, level 2, level 3, and they come back and they're like, okay, I'm ready to hit it again because I saw those speeds drop. Where should I start? My answer typically with golfers, Mike, is always like, well, it wouldn't be a bad idea to start from the beginning. But if you're ready to up that intensity, I think you could easily go into that second training cycle if you've completed, like you said, maybe a previous.
I'd say if you've done this training and you've completed that first training cycle, and then even if you took a few months off, I'd still go into that ramp up phase and probably go into the second training cycle. None of that is going to hurt you, and you're definitely going to be in a position where your coordination level is going to be okay to do those drills in level 3 and level 4. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, do we have to take 4 weeks between level 2 and 3? So basically, do you have to have the maintenance phase?
Yeah, I don't think you see a lot of athletes in other sports that are pushing the needle for consistently for 8 years, right? I think the body needs some time to cycle in and out of these. You'll find that you'll be able to generate faster speeds when you take those breaks. So I think take the 4 weeks, give yourself the 1 day a week, and then just be ready to hit it hard when you come back.
Yeah, I would say this, like, you need to take at least that 4 week kind of break where it goes into that maintenance phase and is less aggressive. Well, at least in the event that you want to get more speed later on. So if you want to really get that ramp up and get into that second jump, you need the little bit of maintenance phase. It makes a big difference. All right. What's next here? What do we want to go to?
Hey, I'll get in there. So Tyler, a lot of people are asking about your studies. They'd love to hear what you've been doing, what you've been seeing. And then I think that would get right into a lot of the non-dominant questions. So can you review your non-dominant study, your just 3 club study, and your shot scope one?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to do that. And I'll say I've really enjoyed the platform that SuperSpeed's given me to do some of this golf research. Previous to this time, I think the only person who'd ever heard about my research was my mom, and I wouldn't even count my wife on that list. And so now it's kind of fun for me to have people actually excited about what I'm doing in my lab here at Utah Valley University. And so just a quick recap of some of the studies I've done for those who maybe don't know. A lot of my studies are, again, looking at the pre-post changes through just our level 1 protocol. So that 5 weeks of just the level 1 drills. I'm always obviously looking at club speed, ball speed, carry distance with my TrackMan simulator. And then the other thing I really look at a lot is the way golfers are utilizing the ground. So how do they generate ground reaction forces, which is a fancy way of, again, our golfers utilizing their feet in the ground in a way that helps promote swing speed. And so, the studies I show these gains that we're seeing, but when we start to tease into these details of ground reaction forces, we see that all of those ground reaction force variables that are correlated to club head speed are increasing in the range of about 10 to 15%, depending upon the variable. One really fun study I did last winter was actually a study where I had golfers only do non-dominant training. So these actually were right-handed golfers. They went through the level 1 protocol, but instead of 18 dominant, 18 non-dominant, they did all of them non-dominant. All of them just took left-handed swings with the SuperSpeed clubs, tracked them for, again, the 5 to 6 weeks, brought them back into the lab and saw about a 6.5 mile per hour jump in club head speed, saw ground reaction forces improve. In fact, even maybe a little bit better than the right and left-handed swings. And so that was a cool study where when people say, should we do non-dominant studies? I say, every training modality we do in every sport includes both side training. It doesn't matter what we're doing. And we feel really strongly that the data and the research that others have done in other sports and that what we're seeing in golf suggests that should be true for speed training as well. And we've seen that work really well. I did just finish a really cool one on an on-course study paired up with ShotScope, where we had golfers actually track their on-course, what they did on the golf course. And they're gaining, again, the 15 to 20 yards of swing speed, which a lot of people ask what that percentage equates to in yardage. It's about 15 to 20 yards. But the coolest thing is that their fairway accuracy actually increased by 10%. So these players, they weren't hitting the ball further offline or out of bounds. As we've spoken of the improvements in the efficiencies of their swings, they're getting longer, they're getting straighter. They end up being able to shave just a little under 3 strokes off their rounds, which I think that's a cool study. And to tease some studies I've going on, I just got this really cool new motion capture system in my lab. I was playing around with it yesterday. So some fun stuff this winter, looking more specifically at kinematic changes and what happens with the SuperSpeed clubs versus drivers, and just more fun stuff related to how we can help golfers generate speed. So I would say, in terms of putting these products in the hands of users, I just don't know if there's another training aid company that's looking at as many golfers going through protocols and looking at pre-post measurements like we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, to hit a little bit on the non-dominant side, I know there's seen a lot of comments that there seems to be controversy about it. I don't really buy it at all. Like, as far as that there should be controversy. Again, every other sport in the world trains this way. There have been tons and tons and tons of research done on soccer players and field hockey players and everything else under the planet that shows very definitively that when you train things on the non-dominant side, it has very positive effects to the actual dominant side motion. The study Tyler just got done with, showed that, empirically. It was awesome the way he did that study. I think the one thing you could say on that one is that, again, a lot of people that are doing this training are not doing a lot of other training along with it. If you are, fantastic. I think there's a lot of things that can benefit it. But honestly, just the muscle activation benefit and the motor unit recruitment benefits that you would get if you're not doing a huge gym program that you get from doing non-dominant training is going to make your speed training so much better when you do this on both sides. So that would be another big piece there. If you're a player that's in the gym 4 days a week and doing all kinds of counter rotation training and power training on both sides and those kind of things, I still think you should do non-dominant training in the sport-specific motion, but I think the percentage difference in the gains that you're going to get from it will probably be a little bit less. Would you agree with that, Tyler?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, Mike, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, but trust me, it's not a waste of time. It's something that we've seen over and over again. Back when we were measuring a lot of different kinematics and 3D motion capture data, we did non-dominant training outside of speed training when we were really trying to improve stabilization of different segments in the kinematic sequence. We found that to be a very effective method of training things that are very hard to train for players that they need to get better at. And a lot of times it really does improve, especially a lot of lead side stability for the player. And I'll just kind of leave that at there until we get into another 2-hour talk about rotational kinematics and non-dominant training. We have another webinar, by the way, Tyler and I did, all about non-dominant training. You can probably find that on our website. So check that out if you want more information there. All right, Kyle, hit us.
And Desiree typing all these questions. And I think a lot of people are talking about tournament play. If you guys could talk a little bit about tournaments. I think some people are really high level, have maybe 3 or 4 days of actual tournaments, and some have single day tournaments. Yeah, talking about that.
I saw those pop up, Kyle. And again, I'll kind of pattern that a little bit after some of the college players I'm working with and some of the professional players. I would say this is where we don't want to stop training. And I think this is one of those things where, like, when you go into tournament season, the very worst thing you can do, again, no matter the sport, would be to just turn off training or scale back so far that you're going to regress in terms of the things that you're doing. And so this is where I think you can get in maybe this higher specialized training, which is where we would cycle through when you got an off week, or if you've got 2 weeks of no tournament, hit it hard for the 3 days a week. If you come into a tournament week or a couple weeks in a row, scale back to 1 day a week. Do that, maybe at the beginning of the week, if the tournament's going to be later on, a couple days before the tournament. And then when you go back into not having tournaments for a couple weeks, go back to the 3 days a week. I think this is the pattern, we've been kind of working with our high level players, and we've been able to find that with this kind of training, they've still been able to put on, one player I'm thinking of in particular, she was able to put on about 6 to 7 miles per hour over the course of this busy tournament play, non-tournament play. And that's ball speed. I should say 6 to 7 miles per hour of ball speed, which again, as a professional player, that's a big jump in 3 to 4 months. So I think can be a really effective way to do that.
Yeah, I think keeping it really simple is like if you're in the first training cycle and it's the first time you've ever done this, you probably don't want to do the training the day right before you're going out to do a tournament, to play in a tournament. Right? I think that's a simple way to think of it. If you're into one of those maintenance phases, the goal would be to get into a maintenance phase and then have that maintenance phase be through the core part of your season. And then when you have a little bit of a time where there's a little bit of time off, or maybe you don't have a major event coming up, that would be the time to get into the ramp up and get into the other training cycles. But honestly, we've seen players, once they get into like the second training cycle or the third training cycle, you can effectively do that training, more during a tournament or on tournament days. Give yourself at least about a half hour to an hour before you actually tee off. But once you've acclimated your body to the training in those later training cycles, I think it's definitely more effective. You can still do that training a little more aggressively while you're playing in a tournament.
I'm gonna answer this one question from Henry Lewis, just because I think this is a great question. We get a lot, and we've kind of alluded to it, but he kind of asked, like, I feel like I'm getting faster, but I also feel like I'm hitting the ball more solid, and kind of what is your research showing as well? And so, I always track smash factor. So again, this efficiency of club speed to ball speed. Smash factor never changes as a result of this. So I think a lot of people think that things come down. You can't find the center of the club face. I just don't see that. I see players still being able to find the club face in the same way they found the club face pre-training. But the other thing too is, and this maybe is especially true with some of the C club data I just finished, where we've got golfers who are really struggling with that impact zone. I've seen some really cool things there where we've gotten just some better angles of attack. We've gotten some more control of the face angles as they've been better through that impact zone. And I've seen some players have some really large gains as those metrics have improved as well. So Henry, I don't think you're alone on that. I think we're seeing, at least I'm seeing that a lot in the collections that I'm doing.
Tyler, can you talk more about any age-related changes? So we've got several people in here that are wondering if any of the results change if they are a senior player or a junior player, maybe kind of on the outer ranges of our age limits. And then also after that, get into the technology that we like to use and how it's used for tracking your speeds.
Yeah, so in terms of the age-related changes, junior players always gain a higher percentage, but that's just because they're lower to start with in terms of raw mile per hours. But I will say, at least in my junior study, that one probably had the highest mile per hour changes. Most of those players were, still gaining the 5, 6, 7 miles per hour, but because they were starting in the 50 to 60 range, that ended up being really, really high gains. And so that's for, I think, junior players. In that study, again, I think the youngest was 4 or 5, the oldest was 15. In the senior study, women senior players actually gained a little bit more than men. And this was one where their average age was about 65. They were right in about that kind of 5.5%. So very similar gains. With the older players, I always like to add this caveat that especially after the age of maybe 55, 60, when you're losing maybe the ability to move as quickly, if you do nothing, your speeds are going to go down every single off season. And so I think for our older golfer, if you were to gain 4 to 5%, because you probably would have gone down 1 to 2% if you did nothing, your gains are probably up, 7, 8%. So I think for those older golfers, like without a doubt, they maybe have some of the most to gain than any of our populations.
Absolutely, they have the most to gain.
Yeah. And then I think the second one, Kyle, was the technology we have been kind of using to track our speeds. So again, the two main ways that we're tracking speeds, and this is the benefit of being able to track air swings, which is obviously really important in our training where you're not hitting a ball. So the PRGR radar, that's a little device that sets kind of behind where you're going to swing in a down the line view. And it can also measure club speed, ball speed, smash factor. And those numbers actually tend to be pretty close to my TrackMan. And so really, really accurate measurement tool. So that's one option. Again, just set it up, see those speeds and kind of get some feedback that way. And then we have partnered with Blast. That partnership, man, that started almost 1.5 years ago. We started talking because we wanted to make sure that we could do the right thing with them. And so we're in constant communication with them with this Blast sensor that goes on the top of the grip, and then actually integrates straight into their app. So that's a really cool feature for those of you who are maybe tech junkies and want to track everything and have a bunch of graphs and stuff that maybe I would get really excited about. And that's we're really excited about that partnership. And I think my favorite thing about that partnership as a data guy is that we continue to meet with them and we continue to send them swings so that their algorithms for detecting these swing speeds get better and better and better. Because in the past, they've always relied on a ball impact. And it becomes a little bit more difficult when you're relying on just an air swing mode. And so we're really happy with where that's progressing. And it's getting, I think there's some also other great features in Blast with some short game and putting and other metrics that can really enhance your training outside of speed training, which can be a great thing too. So those are our two main places we're using to track data.
Yep.
Thanks, Tyler. Mike, can you get into a bit of what we've been doing on the wrist mechanics side, kind of what we're seeing with different products? I know that's one of your favorite topics and we have some questions there, and kind of tease what we've been doing on the grip strength side in terms of the testing and what we're seeing with players.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I guess the first one was a few years ago now. We released the SuperSpeed C Club, which is a counterweighted C Club, or counterweighted SuperSpeed Club that has a bunch of additional protocols that go along with it. The main reason there was we were trying to get a bigger translation to linear velocity or club speed. We were seeing big increases in how fast players were able to rotate. We were seeing big increases in the way they were using the ground, but we weren't seeing as big of increases as we got down to the ball. So the counterweight piece actually allows us to focus those speed training efforts right around that point when the club's starting to release and going down through impact. So that's a really key point, and one that we feel like everyone that picks that up is going to get some benefit. Yeah, I mean, Kyle, I know you guys have been seeing me hold the our new SuperSpeed Squeeze, our grip strength trainer. Stay tuned for that. We're actually going to have a webinar later this month where we're really going to go deep in on that side of everything that we can possibly talk about on the grip strength side. We have a ton of awesome data showing, the amount of static grip strength that like PGA Tour players have and World Long Drive players have and amateur players have, and some of the deficiencies that we see there. We've got a ton of research and things showing that what those grip strength deficiencies can cause in the golf swing. My opinion and theory for a long time is that it's an epidemic in the amateur golf world, and one of the biggest differences between amateur players and professional players is their grip strength, and then their ability to then use that grip strength effectively to create the right amount of grip pressure throughout the golf swing, control the club face through impact, and a lot of different pieces. So be looking. You'll probably see some updates on our website. We'll be adding in a protocol for the SuperSpeed Squeeze, our grip strength trainer. Really simple stuff, very effective. Tyler's already completed a study showing just how effective this tool is going to be for players to increase grip strength. But we'll be doing a webinar on that here later this month, right after Tyler gets back from Hawaii. So get ready for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Mike. You guys might have gotten into this, but a lot of people are asking, once they get through the 5 levels, what are they supposed to do? How do they keep training? Did you answer that already?
Not really, but we certainly can. I mean, I would actually, like, if you've done this for 3 years, let's say you did the first training cycle 1 year, the second training cycle the next season, the third training cycle the next season, I mean, I think you would be absolutely fine to do the third training cycle again with the overspeed training. It's not going to cause an issue of any type. Think of these returns, though, eventually as being somewhat in diminishing returns, right? The 5th year that you do this, it's going to help you maintain speed that you may have lost, but you might not be getting another 5% jump 5 years in a row. I mean, that's kind of insane in a lot of ways. The other thing that I would look at there, and Tyler can pipe in here too, that's when you start looking for other potential deficiencies that are going on. So like after that first year, if you've gotten big gains, but it's like, I still don't feel like I'm using the ground as well as I could. Well, now it might be time to look at the force pedal protocols and go through that kind of training. maybe you are a person that's starting to hit your strength caps after that point, and your speed has caught up to where you are from a strength standpoint. Adding in some, different types of strength training protocols or physical training protocols could be very effective for you at that point. But as far as the overspeed training, I'd stay in that level 3 training cycle, that third training cycle. That's going to be your kind of gold standard once you get there. Add in the C club training if you haven't done that. So I think those are a lot of different things that you could move to.
And I'm glad, Mike, you talked about the idea of just kind of just some consistency. And again, as my background being in exercise science paired with biomechanics, a lot of times the long-term things that we do day after day, they may not be like the sexiest, but they're the things that we kind of need to do, right? And I think speed training kind of becomes that type of thing where, I think, we can spend time getting creative and all these kind of things. And I think as Mike talks about it, that might be a way to squeeze out the last 1 to 2%. But I think most of us are going to have such huge gains with the 98% we're going to get from these protocols that I would just say kind of do them. And then you just kind of have to stick with them, right? It just has to be something that you kind of now put into what you're doing every single day so that you can maintain those gains and keep yourself swinging fast, for years to come. Because, that's where the bulk of the gains are going to come from, just sticking with it.
I mean, in the last 7 years, I would say, we've probably personally worked with over 700 tour players around the world. The players that we have worked with, I would say over 90% of them have made speed training a regular part of their actual routine, that has never changed, never left. We've advanced some of those protocols from time to time, but most of them, they're not doing anything crazier than what's on the website right now, and it's still causing positive returns to their golf game. So I think a big piece there is just making it part of your routine. If it becomes part of your normal routine, that's going to be the recipe for success.
I'll say this too, because I see this question pop up. This is where I've loved the addition of the force pedals as well, because I think there's some fruit to be had, some maybe lower hanging fruit of golfers who mechanically could learn how to use the ground a little bit better. And so again, if you go to our training site, you'll see the force pedal protocols. And these are different, drills and positions where you're going to place these force pedals under different points of your feet. And you're going to focus on where you're actually pushing on the ground, when you're pushing on the ground that way. I know from my research that the SuperSpeed training on its own is going to improve a lot of that. But I think when you start to add in these force pedals, that's kind of now we're starting to get to maybe squeezing out the last bit of speed and can really utilize those as a way to really enhance that training. And so again, those, I saw some people ask where those were. Those are just on that same training page, under those force pedal protocols.
Kyle, you want me to just knock out a few of these from the top real quick?
Yeah, I'm trying to type them all. If we don't end up getting to your guys' questions, feel free to email info@superspeedgolf.com. We'll stay a little longer here and try to get through as many as we can.
I'm going to hit a few of these. So Ken's question way back at the top of the list, going through level 1, had to stop due to injury. So basically, if you take 2 or 3 weeks off in the middle of one of these primary training phases, should you start over? I'd say yes. I'd say once you get back from injury, I'd go back to the beginning of whatever training cycle you're on and try to get the whole way through it, and then get into those maintenance phases. So that's going to probably be the most effective there. Let's see. Level 1 and 2 for the first time, got 5% gains, just didn't see it go to the course as much. Now, I answer it this way. You should be seeing much more than a 5% increase in the actual speed of the super speed clubs. Those should move 15 to 20% faster than your normal golf swing. If you're having trouble taking it to the course, I think sometimes the off season is an even better time to maybe make this work, because if you can get yourself where you could hit some balls into a hitting net or something like that inside where you can't really see ball flight, a lot of times that gives you the confidence to swing more aggressively and make that swing more like you're doing in the speed training protocol. And then it's easier to take that to the course during the next season. The other thing I would say there is just make sure when you get to the range, don't be tentative. Get after it, make it feel just like you're swinging the super speed clubs and things like that will make that a lot better. Cold weather. I got to say this. One of my favorite social media posts that I see is when I've got somebody like in the Arctic somewhere doing speed training like outside in the middle of a snowstorm. So my opinion, like if we can play platform tennis and things when it's freezing cold outside in the winter, we can do speed training. Obviously, do that safely and not in the middle of a blizzard. But, if you can find like a covered portion of your deck or anywhere you can swing this club safely would be a great way to do it. I'd really try to get the 3 days in during those primary training phases. If you can't get 3, if you can at least get 2, getting up to those 3 days a week is really optimal during the primary training phases.
And again, Mike, I see some questions on here about if I miss a week over the course of the 10-week period, am I lost? Or if I miss one day here and there, no, for sure you're not lost, right? Our preference is the 3 days a week. That's what's going to allow the speed gains. Again, if you go on vacation, right, then just come back and just hit it hard again after that. And I don't think we need to go crazy. But when you start feeling like week after week, month after month, you're not hitting the 3 days a week, that's when you're not going to get those expected gains that we'd have before. So,
yep. Yeah. Another question here about, movement screens during the protocols, and everybody has limitations. My opinion on this in general, again, nope. If you don't have pain, you can do this training and get big gains safely. That's kind of across the board. Just because you might have a slight mobility restriction or something going on in your body, sometimes those things are areas that you want to work on and change. Sometimes they're things you can't change. If you want to make big changes on that, I think doing that simultaneously to these programs doesn't really have a lot of negative impact, mainly because, again, we're making practice swings. There's no impact. There's not a lot of risk of injury from the training. Let's see. Got to level 4 season hit most of the season. Should I start back at the 3rd training cycle, or how to hit off the season? If you've already gotten through like your 2nd training cycle or into level 4, I think you're pretty safe then to, start with that 3rd training phase, do the ramp up for 2 weeks of level 3, do level 4 and 5, and then get back into a maintenance phase. I think that's kind of right where you are. 66 already improved 10%. Great job, by the way. That's fantastic, Stephen. Do I need to move on to level 3 and 4? Again, I'd follow the training cycle the way we have it there. So if you've done that primary training phase for cycle 1 for a while, make sure you're in that maintenance phase for a little bit and then get into that 2nd training phase. Those other protocols, do advance some of the drill positions in positive ways that can help you. Specific swing adjustments recommend to help boost speed. The fastest way for most players can average their top speed is to do overspeed training. 100%, it's the fastest way it's going to help you get better. As far as swing adjustments, I would worry less about how you're swinging the club, worry more about, what the result is. Is it moving faster? Generally when we see things start to move faster and more athletically, the other pieces of technique tend to kind of follow along with that. Obviously, if you have a good golf coach and they're recommending different things to make your swing more efficient, do those practice programs right alongside. I think that's the best way to go about that. All right, we're getting there here.
Don't have time.
Elaborate on the changes to the level 2 protocol. Okay. All right, Bob. So basically, the new level 2 protocol no longer has kneeling swings. That's the biggest one. So I think it'll be a lot easier for a lot of your senior players to do. We still think kneeling swings are an effective thing to do for some players. It's just we had too many people in the overall body of people using SuperSpeed golf that had trouble getting into that position, or it was uncomfortable for their knees. So we did decide to take that out of the official protocols. But yeah, I'd definitely move on to level 2 there. Kyle, you had a couple?
Yeah, Tyler, we're getting a lot of them. How to swing tempo, Mike and Tyler, relate to the speed, swing speed, backswing time, total swing time, downswing time, and then what the blast app is telling them. I think a few of those are coming in.
Yeah, I would think that most of what we see probably when we compare like the elite level players to amateurs is that, and definitely for swing speed, is that increasing the speed of the backswing can be a really great way to increase the overall swing speed. And so, I would say that that's one of those things where I think a lot of us like the low and slow idea, as you're doing drills and grilling these drills. Again, it's great to do drills for those things, but for our speed type components, I think you'd find that increasing that backswing time actually ends up being a great way to increase the downswing time. I don't know if Mike has anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes into how muscles fire, right? Like if the muscles contract faster, there's a potential for a little bit more speed there. You know, we typically see that professional golfers have a slightly faster tempo than most amateurs, so that's a big one. Yeah, I think we could probably go there. I like that question you're answering right now, Kyle. The larger grip sizes, do they impact speed or tighter grip? Tune into our next webinar, and I promise we will go through the 100% 360 comprehensive details on how grip strength, grip pressure, and all of those things are going to affect speed. Next question by Barry. Test the benefits for those with fast twitch fibers versus slow twitch. We see big benefits for both. You know, short of doing muscle biopsies on all of these players, it's very hard to tell exactly what the makeup of their muscle fiber situation is. I can tell you this: we see huge results with like world long drive players that have, I would generally speak, have a lot more fast twitch fiber than a lot of amateur players, but we see big gains in all of those different segments.
I just have to add on that again, my master's in exercise physiology is coming out right now, Mike, when I think about these muscle biopsies. And muscles, again, are these complex structures that to really understand how a muscle's firing and the force velocity profiling of muscles and things like that I think we hear of a lot in training. In order to really accurately do that, you would literally need to muscle biopsy and do some really advanced training to that individual. And so, it's not enough just to take kind of a general approach to those types of things. And so, again, it'd be great to muscle biopsy everyone and create these profiles. But, that's not very realistic. I think to Mike's point, what's cool about that physiologically is we do know from research there are these muscle fibers that kind of sit in like a hybrid state where they're kind of could go one way or the other based on almost the way we train. And so that's where what we end up happening is really kind of pushing some of those fibers to be maybe more, fast twitch, fatigue, like these fast firing, fatigable muscles. So,
yeah.
I think we could.
One here. I remember this question got emailed in too. About would it be better for your left shoulder in the backswing to go? I think it's more under or on top of your chin. I think a lot of that is actually going to have to do with neck mobility. So, basically how far does your neck actually moves almost 90 degrees during the course of your golf swing if you can rotate that much. So, and if you think about that, if I'm in a golf stance and I rotate back, my neck has actually rotated to the side and down a little bit. So there's a lot of movement there, and a lot that depends on how your neck mobility is going to be and how far you're going to be rotating. Generally speaking, we'd say most tour players, their left shoulder is going to be more underneath their chin, not above it. But those are going to be players that have a lot more range of motion. So I think it depends a lot more on your flexibility and range of motion there than anything else.
I think we can get through the rest of these guys. I think a great one here about the different weights to utilize. Tyler, we were just talking about this, that our competition is different weights than our thoughts. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, again, I think, and you guys did a lot of this studying, this wasn't that just by happenstance, these were the weights and lengths that we talked about. I think you guys did a lot of stuff there. I've started to do some of my own testing with various weights that get either really heavy or really light and kind of different combinations of such. And again, while that is training something, I don't want to suggest that's not training something. I think a couple of those issues are as we get really light, we tend to see some mechanical breakdowns, a lot of upper body dominant swings I've seen in kind of my testing, less utilization of the ground, which I think tends to be a weakness of amateur golfers anyway. And then when you get too heavy, like we've talked about, if we're thinking of the force velocity curve and we want people training really at these high velocities, as those weight gets too heavy, that velocity drops, and then we're just training something that's not related to speed. And then the last piece of this, which I think might honestly be the most important, Kyle, to that question, is our goal is to get something that's incredibly transferable out to the course and allow golfers to do something that's really comfortable to them. I would say that 45-inch driver tends to be the thing that we care the most about moving the fastest. Irons, right? A lot of times it's finesse and distance control. And so I think having them be, the 45 inches and the weight combinations that are very similar to driver swing weights gets golfers in a zone where they're going to be able to transfer that maybe to a driver a little bit better. I think also it's not so different to what they're normally used to, but I think the stresses of the body potentially could be a little bit better too. But again, I'm excited this winter. That's where I'm going to do a lot of testing. I've already done some preliminary stuff on some force plates, add some kinematics to it. So again, stay tuned, but we'll really stand behind what we're seeing with this 3-club set and the lengths we do and the great gains our users are seeing.
Yeah, so. I just add to that, like too light, I think has very little use at all. I think overspeed training needs to be pretty close to the weight of the driver. You know, we're ranging about 20% light to about 5% heavy. I think there's more benefit to things that are heavier than that, just not for speed training. More benefit for maybe some different mechanical training, some other types of things that may affect speed, but aren't pure overspeed training. Boy, this is a good one, Kyle. We could spend another hour on this. Do you find a golfer's trail elbow is a result of steep swings, or the path of their trail elbow? I think grip weakness or strength or grip pressure. Boy, that's a big one. I mean, I think if you're talking about positionally, the way the trail elbow works, the biggest thing that's going to be a factor there is going to be external shoulder rotation. So how much shoulder rotation is in that arm is going to be the primary factor there. After that, I would actually say it's going to turn into mobility issues in the wrist, how that wrist's able to move. Because again, the goal is to get the club head back to the ball. And if our wrist doesn't move or our shoulder doesn't move, we're going to have to do some funny things to accomplish that goal. I think next piece on there, I think grip strength can definitely cause some factors there that we've seen. I think grip strength and grip pressure are a very related piece of concern. Again, we'll talk about that again next month. Isometric training specific to speed. Again, I would say, Tyler, you can talk about this too. Like more isometric training is going to be more strength kind of based training. You know, speaking of grip training, I think there are some very positive isometric things we can do in conjunction with other types of training for grip strength, which is one. But again, I think the overall for when you're training speed, the rule is you've got to be moving faster than your normal swing. So that's kind of the opposite of isometric training.
Yeah, there's some cool research out there right now that's coming out to show the benefit of isometric training as a way to to train tendon strength and ligament strength, which in the past it's tough to measure, it's tough to quantify. So again, I read that research a lot, so that's kind of a cool thing that's coming out. And I will say the other thing I'm seeing, and this was actually, I was down at a TPI Power presenting some things down there and being a part of that. And I think there's some cool things that players are doing and trainers are doing where they're creating maybe some like isometric pushes against some weighted bands and some things like that. And that was kind of cool for me to see some of that stuff. But yeah, to Mike's point, I think it's more of a strength component, or maybe potentially a way to light a fuse to then lead into the super speed training. So
yeah, so last couple questions here, and then we're going to close it out. You saw that you should be swinging the red faster than your driver. You topped at 123 with driver. That's great, by the way. Great speed there. Never reached that with the red. You know, typically speaking, you know, we'll see players that have somewhat longer type motion swings will have a little bit more trouble getting the red speed faster than the driver. But I definitely think that might just be a case of either you're getting tired during the sessions, you're not doing this at a time where you have enough energy, or, you know, it could be one of those where, you know, you just got to really get after it with that red club. I know it's hard and you got to push through it a little bit, but I would definitely want to see the red club a little bit faster. All right, thoughts on the most efficient ordering of club weights. We're always going light first, light, medium, heavy, move faster first. That gets your brain expecting that faster speed from your body, and then we move through those other weights to create permanency with the training. Again, the only alteration I'd put from that would be some type of motor unit recruitment exercise right before the training. That's going to be some type of power move that's going to activate more of your body and then do the light, medium, and heavy. But again, I'd say that's an advanced piece there. I would only do that if you've got a trainer that's recommending the right exercises for you there.
I looked at this one, Mike. Brad, to answer your question, I've done a lot of this for my own game with the players I work with. And if your focus is to generate more swing speed and make sure you're fresh for the swing speed training, do that prior to the simulator session. Again, that's going to leave you a little bit fatigued for sure for maybe some of the mechanical things you're working on, but I'd rather you be a little fatigued for those than doing an hour of hitting balls and then trying to do speed training. I think your speeds are going to, not I think, I know your speeds are going to drop from what I've done. And then your potential gains are going to go down. So speed train first. And I think maybe that's maybe a good way to kind of summarize this idea as you get into these off-speed training is, if the goal is to maximize speed, right, let's make that be the priority. This other stuff becomes great accessories, and we can really go into the weeds to try and squeeze out a little bit here and there. But, you know, speed as that first thing we're focusing on is what we really want you to be doing this offseason to get the most benefit.
Yeah, well, awesome, guys. Thank you very much for spending some time with us tonight. I hope you got some information, and thank you very much for all the questions. Remember, stay tuned. There's a lot of cool new stuff coming from SuperSpeed Golf real soon. There'll be some updates on the website, emails going out. Tyler, thanks again. Have a great trip to Hawaii. Kyle, thanks for being on the back end. Everybody else, have a great evening, and we will see you next time.